Hello there, welcome along. Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are Mark Ogden from ESPN and Henry Winter from Sports Illustrated. Welcome along to you both. Let's quickly run through the back pages. In the Telegraph today, Amorim, sometimes I hate my players and want to quit. Raducanu routed. And Tuchel sorry for repulsive Bellingham. And in the Daily Star, also, sometimes I hate my players and want to quit. Plenty from Ruben Amorim in the morning papers. Ed hits the sack. And no TAA, no tar. On the Times, they lead with Tuchel apologising to Bellingham, and gone in 62 minutes, Emma Raducanu out of the US Open. At the back of the Mirror, Scholes shoulder, we have how on Isak. Other players need time, focus and energy, not him. Also, they go with Amorim, not sure if I am going or staying. And Tuchel says no tar to Trent, call up. The back of the Express, Isak won't derail my tune. How only has time for team and not Alexander. Amorim's future far from clear. And again, they go with no room for Trent. And we'll look at a piece from Mark Ogden, one of tonight's guests in for ESPN. Should Manchester United transfer Bruno Fernandes away? But let's start with that back page of the Telegraph discussing Ruben Amorim's future. It's not been the greatest of starts. In fact, that is a slight understatement of the facts. Where do you think, is this a must-win game, Henry, for Ruben Amorim against Burnley?
I think if you're a Manchester United manager, every game is a must-win game, but he needs to sort his press conferences out first, because he's basically talking himself into, an early departure. I don't know whether he wants that, but I think the history of Manchester United managers is, well, A, playing with width, which he doesn't in his system, and B, being defiant. I mean, you wouldn't hear these sort of comments from Sir Alex Ferguson or going back in time from Sir Matt Busby. You need defiance as Manchester United manager. Biggest club in the country, probably the second biggest club in the world behind Real Madrid. He's in a huge place, and he has to sort of stand up and be strong enough. Oggy was there at Grimsby in midweek, and you had a manager cowering. I mean, you can't do that. What sort of message does that send out to the players? What sort of message does it send out to potential signings, to supporters? And then to come out in this press conference today, and actually inside the Telegraph, there's a very interesting piece from their reporter there, Mike McGrath, in which he talks about the sort of the intensity and the passion of Amorim. And when you see it close up, it is, there's an impressive side to it. But when you actually take the words and you almost sort of crunch them together, as we tend to in the media, particularly on the back of the Star, and you're saying almost, I hate my players and I want to quit. I mean, these are really dangerous words. And sometimes, look, it's great for us, but sometimes managers talk too much.
Mark, you were at Grimsby on Wednesday night and were confused by what he was actually trying to say. What have you made of today's press conference?
Yeah, he does have a habit of kind of being quite strong after game and reeling back a couple of days later in a press conference. And he's doing it again today. He was saying on Wednesday that his players showed him everything. You can't change 22 players, so something else has to change. And that was almost a hint that if you can't change 22 players, what do you change? Well, that's usually the manager. And it was almost like he was asking to be removed. And he said today that, after the game he wanted to quit or he wanted to go. He said that today, which is, it just blows hot and cold. And obviously he's very emotional, and it's almost like Kevin Keegan in some respects. You just don't know what you're going to get after a game. He just explodes with passion and emotion and strange things that he says. But it's not great for Man United to have a guy who it's unstable to have a coach who lurches from one direction to the next in such short space of time. So today he's kind of tried to, douse the flames a little bit by saying that he loves his players sometimes, he hates them another time. Yes, he wants to go some days, but he wants to stay for 20 years the next day. I mean, Henry's talking about being defiant. I mean, there is a little bit of defiance in him in the sense that he won't change his system. And I think that is the root of his problems, that he's so wedded to this 3-4-3 system, which is not working, and he hasn't got the players to play it. And that's why United are losing games. And most managers or coaches would think, well, I need to save my job here. I'm going to have to change the system, be pragmatic, try and find a way. But he won't do it. It's almost like he's so desperate to prove that his system works that he's prepared to lose his job over it. And I think the way it's going, I mean, you asked Henry at the start, is it a must-win for Amorim tomorrow? I don't think it's a must-win. It's definitely a must-not lose. If they lose against Burnley tomorrow, I think that really could signal the end for him next week.
Henry, are you getting the feeling that he's a bit out of his depth?
Look, I mean, we saw at Sporting that there was a very good coach there, but Manchester United is a step up in terms of pressure, the scrutiny, the fact that we're talking about it. You've probably been talking about it all day. I mean, Oggy is right to say that he tries a couple of days after one of his outbursts to sort of douse the flames, but you don't douse flames with paraffin as he's done in this case, and just made it, just sort of continue and continue. He's under huge pressure. The tactical thing, as Oggy rightly alludes to, 3-4-2-1. I mean, look, if you're Oliver Glasner, you've made the system work at Crystal Palace, but it's not the way the Manchester United play traditionally. It's not the way that this slightly sort of hybrid, overpaid squad was set up. But look, Manchester United can get rid of the manager and he can walk out, as they've done time after time since Sir Alex Ferguson. But the issue is the culture of the club, because you have players at Manchester United who sort of underperform and then go and do well elsewhere. So what is it? It must be something about the culture at Manchester United, whether that's the tone set by the Glazers at the top, where it's all about them, it's all about sort of selfishness, it's all about what you can take out of a club rather than what you can put in it. Or is it down to the individual responsibility of the players? But it's a cultural thing as well as a tactical issue with the current manager.
Mark, you've done a piece today about the tactical side, about this rigid 3-4-3, and you make a case that is Bruno Fernandes, the best player at the club, suited to that system.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the question was, is United's best player their biggest problem? And obviously Bruno Fernandes last season, many would argue that he almost kept Man United up with his goals and his assists. And you can't actually make that case, because without his goals last year, United would have been in a real mess. But because Amorim is so wedded to his system, he can't really find a perfect place to play Bruno Fernandes. If he plays him in an advanced position, then he hasn't got anyone in midfield he can trust to play in the two, which is Casemiro and one other. But if you put him in the two, which he has been doing recently alongside Casemiro, then they lose his ability further forward, and he hasn't got the ability to play a proper defensive midfield role. Neither is Casemiro, neither is Kobbie Mainoo, and neither is Manuel Ugarte. So in many ways, it's almost like, well, if United were to receive a bid from Saudi Arabia, which there was interest from Al Hilal at the start of the window, Al Ittihad a sniffing around again. If suddenly somebody says there's £100 million for Bruno Fernandes, should they take it and reinvest that money on players that can't actually get around the pitch, can be a proper holding midfielder in that midfield? I was speaking to one former player, and he said that if Declan Rice was playing alongside Bruno Fernandes, it'd be fine, because Declan Rice can do the job of two midfielders. He can run, he can cover the ground, he can pass, he can do everything that a traditional midfielder does. But United haven't got that. And with Bruno Fernandes in the side, it almost exacerbates their problems. So, look, ultimately, you can't get rid of your best players, especially when you've got a lot of bad players. But their best player right now is Bruno Fernandes, but he's not playing well enough to suit the system.
There'd be a riot, Henry, if they sold Bruno Fernandes, wouldn't there?
There would be a riot, and it would be rather naive, because I agree with Oggy in terms of they've got too many number 10s. Obviously, they brought Mateus Cunha in there, Brian Mbeumo. Don't forget Mason Mount, who's actually been in pretty decent form. He's another number 10. Kobbie Mainoo has played as a 10 before. But the issue that I have about Bruno Fernandes is that which is a good issue, is that he actually cares. I mean, you see, okay, so he moans to the referee and he flaps his arms around like a sort of, a baby eagle trying to sort of fly for the first time. And that is annoying. But he does actually care about Manchester United. You hear it when he speaks, you see it when he plays, and you hear all the stories backstage. Oggy's very close to Manchester United. He will know this. The type of things that Bruno Fernandes does for staff behind the scenes, helping people out. He actually cares. And if anything, Manchester United need more of that attitude of putting the team first. So I take the tactical point that Oggy is saying, and I agree, they absolutely need a central midfielder and a goalkeeper. They should have addressed that in the summer. But again, part of the sort of the culture that's built up under the Glazers are not focusing enough on what the football team really needs. But I would, I think there would be a riot if, and there's a long list of things that the fans want to riot about if Bruno Fernandes was put on a plane to Riyadh.
Players are leaving, Mark, from Manchester United. I mean, Rasmus Højlund has agreed a deal to go to Napoli. Antony's on his way out. Are these players that are going to do exactly what Henry said and thrive elsewhere, away from this culture?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, because I think the players that have gone in the past have actually been better players. I think United are really down to the dregs right now, with all due respect to the players that are leaving. Rasmus Højlund was never good enough. Antony was never good enough. Alejandro Garnacho might embarrass United at Chelsea, but his situation there, attitude-wise and performance-wise, he hasn't done it, and I think Amorim's right to get rid. Tyrell Malacia, again, he'll come and go without anyone noticing, and the one that's left is Jadon Sancho. So I think the players that are basically heading for the exit door are players that they shouldn't have signed in the first place. But are they going to get what they want for them in terms of fee? That's debatable. United need to get some decent money in. They're saying they won't let them go for less than their valuation, but I mean, we're now like 3 days to the transfer deadline and nobody's wanted them yet. So I'm pretty sure they'll have to take less than what they want, but they need to go because they're not good enough. And, finally at United, there's some ruthlessness about players going out, because too many players, and quite a few on the pitch at Grimsby on Wednesday night, have hung around for too long.
Kobbie Mainoo, Henry, asking to go out on loan to get game time. A young, talented English player.
Yeah, I mean, he was in the, he played, for Southgate. Didn't he play all 4 of the knockout games at the Euros? But I mean, I take Oggie's point, but I do think that, the history of Manchester United players in recent years is, even if they've been stinking the place out at Old Trafford, when they actually leave, they actually go and do well. I mean, Antony went out on loan to Real Betis and it was fantastic there. Scott McTominay, who was deemed surplus to requirements and how they could do with him in central midfield at the moment, he's obviously prospered in Napoli. Didn't he win Player of the Year as well as the title? Dean Henderson, going back a little bit, other reasons there, but he's now England's number 2, and how they could do with Dean Henderson in goal. So this comes back to sort of my earlier very boring point that it's partly a cultural issue at Manchester United. We can't simply dismiss these players. We can say they don't care, they're overpaid and all that, but these are not necessarily poor players. And I think you'll find when they do go elsewhere, sometimes they do very well.
So talking of transfers, wouldn't be a transfer chat if we didn't mention Newcastle and Alexander-Isak. Now Nick Woltermeder's coming in, Mark. Do you see Isak being able to leave, or are Newcastle going to wait for one more in?
Sorry, Claire, I thought you were going to talk about Henry's with the Sports Illustrated then, but you're on about football. No, I mean, I think Newcastle still needs to get one more in. Obviously, they let Callum Wilson go at the end of the season, so they are already a striker down. So if Isak goes, that's 2. So, Woltermede is a striker that will obviously replace one of them. Johan Visser is a player that they like, and obviously we know that Strand Larsen at Wolves. So I think they need to get a second one in, and it's whether Liverpool can then stump up the cash or the bid for Isak that will make Newcastle do the deal. But I think it looks more likely than not that Isak will leave before the transfer deadline, because Newcastle are trying to get some business done. But again, the clock's ticking, isn't it? And Liverpool have to meet Newcastle's valuation.
Is there a way back for Isak, Henry, at Newcastle?
Well, just one thing on Woltermede. I saw a lot of him at the Euros at the under-21s, and he's as much a 10 as a 9. I mean, he's the type of player who would actually partner and dovetail well with an Isak figure. I agree with Oggie. I do think it's the end of a saga which should really have been sorted out earlier in the transfer window, and that he probably will move on. But I think Liverpool, who've offered 110, and Newcastle apparently holding out, as we're told, for 150. I think maybe at some point they'll meet somewhere in the middle. Isak's a fabulous player, and he will absolutely strengthen what is already an outstanding Liverpool team. A little sympathy for Eddie Howe? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's sorry, Oggie. He's the one person I've got huge sympathy with in all this, having to deal all this, and he's still getting asked questions about it today. And one thing we should remember, and I hope Isak does remember, is that Eddie Howe has made him a better player, a player who is worth whatever it is, 130 upwards. OK, let's take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll take a look at more of the sports stories in those morning papers, including this in the Times. Tuchel apologises to Bellingham and gone in 62 minutes. Emma Raducanu.